You're listening to Shows That Shaped Me, a podcast by WhatsOnStage. This week's guest is Tony and Olivier Award nominee Kate Fleetwood. Growing up in Stratford-upon-Avon, Kate began her career as a child actor with the Royal Shakespeare Company. In 2010, she played Lady Macbeth in Chichester Festival Theatre's production of the Scottish play, gaining a Tony Award nomination for the show's Broadway transfer. 2015 saw her play Tracy Lord in High Society at the Old Vic, and the title role in Medea at the Almeida. At the National Theatre, she's played Goneril in King Lear in 2014, was nominated for an Olivier Award for London Road in 2015, and now returns to star in Joe Hill-Gibbins' production of Rodney Ackland's Absolute Hell until 16th of June. Here is Kate Fleetwood.
The most memorable production that I've been involved in has to be Macbeth, directed by my husband Rupert Gould and starring Patrick Stewart. It was memorable because, for many reasons. One was because we had such a lovely time as a company, and that's always a good reason to remember something for. And two, the reason it was so memorable is we didn't expect it to be so successful, I guess. And so we started it in Chichester in the Minerva, and we had no idea that we would end up on Broadway with it and making a movie out of it, and still to this day getting recognised by children who are watching the film version for their GCSE English when I'm in Topshop, which makes me feel really down with the kids, which is really great. So yeah, we didn't anticipate the success of it. And so that's always thrilling as a company to go on a journey together, and feeling like that it was hitting a vibration with the audience that was very... It was such an evocative production, and it seemed to nail something in the play that was very scary. So it was a very scary production. It was very inventive. It was continually surprising. And I remember when we did our first run-through of it properly in front of the producers at Chichester, I remember Jonathan Church, lovely Jonathan, watching it, and halfway through the first half he just put his notepad down and he didn't take any notes because I think he was just enjoying it. And we felt we had something really special, and that happened again on London Road. I mean, I have lots of memorable productions. I'm very lucky. I've worked with some incredible artists and great companies. So London Road would fall into that category as well, of not knowing what you have, but humbly making something together and just offering it to an audience and really not anticipating the response. So yes, I'd say Macbeth. And it was a great time for Rupert and I to work together. And it still has a huge place in all of our hearts, everybody who worked on it. The most memorable production I have seen has to be Closer by Patrick Marber. I've seen a lot of shows that I remember fondly. Nicholas Nickleby at the RSC when I was about 10. So many shows. But I thought about this, and I think Closer is the one that I remember watching and having a really instantaneously visceral response to the freshness of it as a text. And being in the audience, I think it must have been about 1998, maybe it was the recast, and it was maybe the original company were on Broadway with it, and there was a version of it in the West End. So it would have been, 97, 98, something like that. And I remember sitting in the audience and reeling with the language, reeling with the bareness of these relationships being played out, the rawness of the language that was used. It felt like a subject which is constantly being excavated, love and relationships, was being shown to me in a very real and raw way that I hadn't seen on stage before. I mean, obviously echoes of Pinter's betrayal and Mamet in its quick, rapid text, and also the time frames that Stoppard would use. But it just felt like the first time I'd ever seen real relationships on stage, very rawly, spun out in front of me. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing, even though I was actually hearing what I suppose, the rawness of real relationships breaking down. And it was also the beginning of the internet was just starting to fire up then. And I remember the opening scene had people typing as if they were on the internet. And the internet was such a new thing at the time, 20 years ago. So, yeah, Closer had a very big impact, I remember. The production that I wish I'd seen, and there are many, but the one that springs to mind is Robert Lepage's The Seven Streams of the River Ota. Because everybody I've ever spoken to who's seen it said it's the best thing they've ever seen. And I've seen a few of his pieces of work, and I just am always thrilled by his perception and the multidisciplinary nature of his work. And I've always enjoyed visual theatre, physical theatre, and dance actually is one of the things I love watching the most because of the discipline. But he just has such an unusual voice and perspective on life. And also I think there's a lot to be said for long-form theatre. One of the things that when I saw Nicholas Nickleby as a child, I remember that being really vivid, my memory of the long form. And recently, the Roman Tragedies at the Barbican by Ivo van Hove. And there's something about immersing yourself in the length of a story and allowing yourself to I suppose, surrender yourself to the time that it takes to tell a story. Like no theatre, Japanese no theatre, that kind of thing. But yeah, I really wish I'd seen that. The person I would most like to have worked with, and again, there are many, but one that springs to mind would have to be Pina Bausch. Not because I'm a trained dancer in any form, but I really enjoy her work when I watch it. I am always amazed at everything that she demands of her performers. I think the rehearsal room would be extraordinary. The frocks would be nice. And again, it's something that I enjoy watching very much, is the multidisciplinary nature of a performer. And I think I'd really like to challenge myself to work with somebody that demanding.
Thank you for listening to Shows That Shaped Me, a podcast by What's on Stage. If you've enjoyed listening, please do subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss a single episode. Previous episodes include Drew McConey, Rosalie Craig, David Babani, and James Graham.